And host for tonight. So thank you all for coming. I have a MFA in creative writing, and I am a fiction and nonfiction writer myself. So the setup, let's talk about what this evening looks like. So first of all, we're going to have memes for you all to enjoy, along with a poll of 5 questions, and that's going to be until 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central Time. Followed by a trivia game, guess that early 2000s artist and album. That's going to be at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central Time. And then there's going to be a live reading from the author herself, Patricia Morency, at 8:50 Eastern and 7:50 Central Time. And then we're going to close the night with a Q&A by the author. All right, so I've been mentioning Patricia Morency. Why don't we introduce the lovely author tonight? Patricia Morency, LCSW, licensed social worker, MED. Her pronouns are she, her, hers. She's a clinical social worker and sexologist. She has a dual master's degree in social work and human sexuality education from Widener University. She has worked in community mental health, higher education, and research institutes across different U.S. regions. Her specialization is in gender and sexual minorities, QIA+, mental health, and sexuality. She also provides trainings in anti-racism, intersectionality, and social justice. She is a proud second-generation Haitian American and an East Coast millennial. She is also my big sister. So give Patricia a round of applause as we start the meeting.
All right, let's get started. So we're going to be playing a little bit of hip hop music and enjoy the show. And we'll be checking in back around 8:30, 7:30.
And we'll be moving on to the live reading, like Patricia said. But first, let's have a little bit of a summary. Right? So we all want to know what the book is about. What happens when the binary lens begins to crumble and humans are forced to see each other for what they truly are? In her debut novel, author Patricia Morency brings us Simply Platonish, an intoxicating tale highlighting gender and race relations from an irreverent and often quirky point of view. This work dives deeper into the spectrum of platonic relationships by introducing us to a college woman hoping to maintain connections with her 2 friends as they slowly become a couple. What she will find not only spices things up, but it forces everyone to ask themselves the hard questions as it pertains to love, companionship, and emotional connection. Take it away, Patricia.
Thank you, everyone. It's funny, my camera was working all night until I have to read, and then it was like, no, we're not working. We're not working. Simply Platonish. Prologue. Pia's perspective. Friendship versus romance is a binary you can release if you want to. More queering of relational space. We've got a lot more than just 2 options, say her. People like me exist, and we matter. Read it again. I felt like I had to get that off my chest before we got started. This story is not for the faint of heart. No, it's not a story about murder. It's a story about race and gender. Ha, bet you wish it was about murder instead, am I right? Sorry, but I have a 0 body count. This story is about Black people. I know. It's also a story about white people in privilege. I know. Now, there may be quite a few of you who are already clenching your teeth. Not another fucking story about racism. It's not all white people. I'm tired and feel guilty for being white. If you think this tale intends to shame you, my dear white folk, then you are sorely mistaken. And it wouldn't benefit me to tell a story bashing white people. So let's skip past the whole white guilt trope, because that's not my angle. Whether we like it or not, our identities shape how we view the world and interact with one another. And I would be lying to myself if I did not acknowledge how the following events during my college years were influenced by the intersection of some of these identities, particularly gender and race. Well, if it makes you feel better, this story centers on relationships. I will also say that, unfortunately, this book does focus quite a bit on 2 women's conflict over a man. So basic, I know. But that's just the surface. More deeply, it focuses on the creating and unraveling of a relationship between a Black woman and a white woman. What? Layers. So many juicy layers. Throughout this tale, you may hate one or more of these characters, but the story isn't meant to villainize one person over the other. We are all unfortunate victims of injustice, whether we are Black or white, men or women. And I'm only focusing on two categories, Black, white, men and women, hard in the binary lens. In this particular story, no one is the hero and no one is the villain. We are all victims of patriarchal supremacy, creating a restrictive narrative of love, romance, friendship, manipulating our insecurities within them. There, I said it. White patriarchal supremacy, the system that dictates what we can and cannot do, should or should not say, love or should not love. And that's the only time I'm going to say it. Maybe. I hope we can take a collective breath and lead into this story. You really got to roll with the punches on this one, white folks. There's going to be shit in here that may confuse you, intrigue you, and piss you off. I hope you can mindfully notice when you are upset or comfortable when something happens to one or more of these characters. Lean into it, but don't let it pull you into emotional paralysis. Learn and move on. My Black, Indigenous, people of the global majority friends, take a seat back and enjoy this wild-ass ride. This story is more than just complications and tensions in the relationships of these three main characters. It's more about missed opportunities and the pain caused by societal expectations and norms of friendship, romance, conflict, forgiveness, and communication. And these societal expectations further complicated and destroyed two relationships that could have been meaningful and lasted a lifetime. So there you have it. A good experience with this book would most likely involve you hating me at multiple points throughout the story. A great experience would involve you getting around to liking me again eventually. Not that I care. Many of my peers wonder over the years about the nature of our three-way relationship. I never knew what to say. Fuck labels. But if anyone asked me now, I'd say it was simply Platonish. Chapter 1. How to survive a college reunion that never happened. I hate myself for being here. I really do. Just look at me, my pathetic little self, sitting here all alone on a Friday night, just feeling miserable and shitty. Why did I have to go? Why did I have to attend that reunion? Nope. I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm not going to beat myself up for going. I thought it was amazing. 99% of the time I spent there was amazing. It was perfect. But those last 2 minutes, 1% of the time, it just fucked me up. But, hold up. Sorry. Let me back it up a little bit and introduce myself. Hello. My name is Pia. And I'm the sexless Jezebel who's in love with a married man. Wait, that's not true. Let's start like that. Why would I say that about myself? But there's one true thing. Ethan and Jack are married to each other. What the actual fuck? No. Why am I feeling bad for myself? No, I decided to go to that reunion. Was it really a reunion? During a year of so many losses and changes, this was another one. A reunion that was supposed to be large and lavish was reduced to yet another week of computer screens and people in tiny boxes. Nevertheless, I was inclined to go and reconnect with people in a past life I yearned to relive, and reconnect the past with my progress since then. I'm proud of who I've become over the past 10 years. Got more degrees, I'm doing great work, I love my coworkers sometimes. So why do I feel terrible? I'm a fucking cliche. A heartbroken woman who clings to the romanticized version of the past. Like an urban romantic comedy from the 90s. The scorned Black woman trope. No, I'm not making any sense. I'm a cool, non-jealous, intersectional feminist. a down-to-earth and easygoing person, singles, not thinking about getting married or having kids yet. Maybe I'm okay where I am in my life. Can't be jealous. In graduate school, I learned about conversion, the idea of feeling happy for a partner getting some of their needs met through someone else. While it was in the context of polyamorous relationships, the concept highlighted a deeper meaning for me. The broader theme in interpersonal relationships, being non-possessive and understanding that one person cannot meet all of someone's needs. I thought it would be liberating to practice this concept in all types of relationships. So why do I feel terrible? I take a moment with the question, oh God, the realization hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm in love with a married man. Oh, my Caribbean parents would be so proud. Actually, he wasn't married when I knew him. He was in a relationship. And was it truly love or something else? I thought I got over these feelings. I thought that I'd moved on. So why the fuck do I care that Ethan married Jacqueline? And they weren't even there at the reunion. That's the worst part. To hear that offhanded yet heartbreaking comment from a mutual friend, Ashley, during the last 2 minutes of our virtual reunion. Well, it looks like the lovebirds could make it tonight. Hope they're enjoying married life in quarantine. Who are you talking about? Ethan and Jack, who else? I emailed her about the reunion last week, but she never responded. Typical Jack, I thought. But wait, what? I stumbled, jumbling my words. I could barely get the words out before the video meeting disconnected. No time to process it, to ask more questions. It just threw me off. And now I'm here feeling sad and confused. I thought maybe they've gone their separate ways or met other people and got married. I had no idea. This brought back so many memories. Why did it have to be that way? Sheesh. No, I must admit to myself that there was a tiny, maybe not so tiny part of me that thought maybe that I'd run into them separately. They were no longer together, and they were single, especially Ethan. And maybe we could have started talking again. There could have been something, a renewed and mended friendship, or no, I can't even think about that now. I can't think about that now. I'm not going to beat myself up. You must be so confused right now. You deserve an explanation as to how terrible I feel. We were all friends, the three of us, since our first year in college. How the hell would we know how things were going to turn out? That those two would start dating each other? That I would stay friends with both as a couple for all those years? That some things may or may not have bubbled up from underneath the surface? My being the recipient of not so direct accusations and feeling guilty somewhere down the line? I buried this a long time ago. Maybe I need to revisit this. After all, it did affect me. It still affects me now. Before I get into it, I will acknowledge that I might sound a little contradictory to the statements I had made earlier. Some days I feel like I have my shit together. I think I'm above and beyond this. I feel like I've forgiven myself. There are days where there was no self-blame. And I think of myself as a good person. And then some days are like today. This night after the end of a 10-year reunion. And I feel like a terrible person. And these negative and irrational thoughts, or maybe they are irrational thoughts. No, I'm doing it again. These irrational thoughts keep popping up in my head. And I just question who I was back. I remember myself back then. I've not changed that much in terms of the essential parts of myself that I love. But I was going through some things when I was younger. You know, maybe I should take a step back. I gotta take a step back and let y'all know what I'm talking about. Maybe it would be good for me to revisit this and put this to bed. Well, if I'm going to start this at the true beginning, I guess it starts in my first year. Day one of the first 40 nights that would change my life.
Let's give Patricia a round of applause for that wonderful reading. All right. Okay. So I think we're ready to move on to the Q&A, which is the final part of this event. All right, we got a bunch of good ones. All right. So the first one that I see is, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the application of your work for the aromantic community.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in the book summary and the book info, talk about like how this book explores the spectrum of Platonic relationships. And so, this particular character, you'll kind of go through her journey as she's, adjusting to being a college student, and everything. Throughout this story, you get to kind of see the exploration of like what attraction is, definition of attraction, defining, challenging what attraction means to people and what it exists outside of that or in between that. And that also applies for the definition of relationships. And so I think that the material there is very inclusive of those types of experiences and different types of relationships outside of romantic relationships. So, folks in that community are interested in learning about that book and seeing that. I think that this story does a good job of kind of expanding the mainstream or challenging the mainstream perception as to like what a relationship actually looks like. And so emphasis on platonic or the spectrum of platonic relationships.
And Spitfire, going to the next one. Did the way social constructs of platonic and romantic love register as the same thing in the mind and body inspire your book?
Yeah. I mean, I think, for a lot of folks, romantic relationships and platonic relationships may look like they have some overlaps, but there are distinct differences. And so I think that this book does a good job of kind of, I'll say, blurring those lines and kind of exploring what that can look like and talking about the legitimacy of platonic relationships, and how they can coexist, or the difficulties of it coexisting in a society where, one is viewed as more important than the other, and how the main character kind of comes to grips to that or wants to challenge that.
Has your work as a sex therapist influenced this book? If so,
yes, right. I'd be lying if I said no. I mean, well, I don't want to kind of jump into other questions, but I think like the progression of like when this story was made, it's something that's been kind of in my mind and churning throughout like, I guess like over a decade now. But I definitely think like the application of, the connecting between like the greater theories or the societal and cultural factors of what sexuality is. A lot of that conversation definitely does tap into my sex therapy background. I wanted this to be a kind of book where it is a novel for sure, right? And it's a fiction story, the characters are fictional and everything like that, but it does really talk about and ties to larger sociological concepts. And so while I'm, entertaining you with this story, there's also what we call like in clinical speak, psychoeducational elements to it, right? Where it's like you're being entertained, but you may learn a couple of things too. And so I think in my training and learning about what sexuality is, and even just like the broadness of sexuality, I love how, we define it. A lot of people think of sexuality is like certain things. Like most times when I ask people or have conversations with folks outside the field, whether it's doing trainings or guest talks or just like talking to people in general, I think most people think of sexuality as like the act of sex, or sexual orientation. And those are inclusive of those things for sure, but it's a lot more than just that. So sometimes I think about it as it's like a life force, right? Or one's quest for pleasure, whatever the forms that might be. So it may or may not involve the act of sex itself, but what is your relationship to pleasure within yourself, the connection to yourself, your mind, body, and spirit, and then in relation to other folks as well. So yeah, I definitely talk about those grander concepts in the book as well.
How long did it take you to write Simply Platonish?
See, if this question was asked like probably even like a couple of months ago, I probably would have a completely different answer. So Simply Platonish is kind of like, it is a pandemic baby. and the fact that like the majority of me like sitting down and putting all these stories and stuff like that was over the pandemic, but it also contains short stories or parts of short stories that I've written over the years, even like dating back to when I was an under. So like the earliest one, like 2010. So it's kind of like over the years, like I've written a little bit here and there and I've kind of left it. And then I revisit. And then like after college, I know particularly between undergrad and grad school, I was kind of experimenting with different types of stories. in realms of like sexuality in general. And then I kind of put that to the side. And then with my work as like, you know, being a sexologist and a DI trainer, you know, kind of thinking about like the psychological theories and educational theories and things like that, and how people see themselves in the world in relation to race and gender. I developed that over the years, especially after, you know, my graduate studies and getting licensed and stuff like that. Seeing the themes of folks that I see clinically and educationally, like the struggles and issues that they go through. And then it wasn't until the pandemic where I can't even explain it, just something. I don't want to say like I had time, because I feel like it's like we felt like we had all the time in the world, but like also we were drained and whatever. And then I was just able to kind of connect all the dots, I guess, or put them slowly together over the course of 2 years. But it was content that was started like back in 2010.
So would you say that the quarantine kind of allowed you to put those stories together?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there was also a moment of like deeper reflection, you know, not only with just like in regards to mental health in general, like how it's affecting us globally, but then also, you know, having the conversations of like the racial reckoning, for example, right? You know, I would be remiss if I was saying like the themes of the book. There's certain themes of the book that were directly influenced by the racial reckoning. I mean, obviously, I've always had, you know, folks like people of color like us, we always had these conversations, right? But it was during a point in time where people were listening. And so being annoyed by, if I'm being honest, like the white folks are like, how can I help? And how can I, you know, do these things? And I'm like, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? Why now? Those types of things. But also like, if y'all folks really want to know when you're listening, here's what it is. And so that also kind of, yeah, prompted me to be able to put all these together and say like, hey, this is a creative way of thinking about these things, or doing these things and putting it in a creative, like a creative fiction type.
That's really, really interesting. Thanks for sharing. All right, so moving along, what do you hope people take away from this book?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means different things to different people. I mean, I know that the first chapter, or the prologue, the chapter is basically a disclaimer for white people. And very cheeky disclaimer for white folks. I just want to be clear, like I didn't write this book for white folks. That's not me. I wrote it for myself. I wrote for folks who are like me. I hope that people of color, particularly women and femmes of color, but people of color in general who've, you know, struggled with like just trying to adjust to life in a primary white institution, struggling with, you know, thoughts of like self-doubt and the, you know, sadness and anxiety can find it relatable, I guess, and, you know, talking about those experiences. But I think one other thing that I want to take from the book is that, you know, these three characters, and obviously when you read more about the book, you learn more about them, that certain events that happen or certain things that people have done, they're pretty ordinary. They're pretty common. And I think that was one thing that I wanted to, because I think at a certain point, and I've had feedback from folks that, you know, from a publishing company that have read those things where, you get mad at certain characters, you get mad at certain white characters, you get mad at, you know, people of color. But for the discretions, like there's a lot of talk about microaggressions and things like that. And those are very common and very, so it's like one of those things where, you know, I feel like at a certain point, people may be thinking like, oh, I would never do that, or this is really, and it's kind of like, you can't imagine how common that is, right? So really putting of like, these are things that happen every day. That it's ordinary to kind of cause it for like a moment of reflection for folks. But then also to validate the experiences of people that have gone through this, you know, for the longest time.
So for this next question, I think that you touched upon it a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate. What inspired you to write the book?
Life. Okay, I mean, it's you know, it's fictional, but you know, I think it's just kind of going out in the world. And I don't know, I feel like I've always been the person that's just very interested in like how people navigate the world, or how people make sense and meaning of the world. Like that's something that I was really interested in, like before college or something like that. Why do people form relationships, or why do people are drawn to certain people and form different types of relationships? I mean, it's part of the reason why I was a psych major and in college, and now I'm social work and education. But I think all three of them kind of tap into like my interest of like looking at how people interact with the world and make meaning and sense of the world. And so that's something that I've always been doing on my own. And then education wise, I'm able to kind of do it through that way. And then I was like, what is a creative way of doing this? So I don't know, like I feel like professionals of field, especially if you're like in clinical or educational stuff, like, you're always called upon, like if you're going to publish something, like it has to be academic. Like either do research, right? Or you write a book, like, you do research, right? Or if you're going to write a book, like, cause I'm a clinician, that it's kind of like, like a clinical based book. I don't know, my words aren't working with me tonight. And I just wasn't, at least at this point in my life, I just wasn't interested in doing that. I mean, I was kind of interested in doing research, but like doing a book, like, and I know a lot of people in my field they have lovely books where they talk about those things, right? But I was kind of like, that's not how I kind of want to do it, at least now in the beginning. If I was going to publish something in the world, I wanted it to be more like a creative arts type of project. And so that was part of the reason why I was like, if I'm going to do it, I would love for it to be in this format. It can also be kind of a means of like escape too, if that makes sense. Experiencing it in a different way. So yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think when you were saying life, that's a great answer. And we all have meaningful experiences and moments that we take away, and writing it down can be very cathartic. What were the most challenging and most rewarding parts about writing the book?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the most rewarding parts of the book is it was very interesting because I feel like I heard something like this, and I hate to bring this author up because I know people have a lot of mixed feelings. I know that she said a lot of, terrible, messed up things about certain communities of folks. But I remember a long time ago, like hearing that J.K. Rowling or something like that, when she wrote Harry Potter, that it was like she had it felt like certain characters were speaking to her or something like that. And she was just able to write what they wrote. And when I heard that a long time ago, I was like, I don't think I would ever experience something like that, right? And then it got to a certain point where I was writing this book where it felt like I was almost in a trance. Like once I was able to kind of establish the setting and kind of generally where I wanted these characters to go, like it felt like I lost time. So it was kind of like this, like you're saying, like a cathartic experience, but then also just like a trance of me just like living life through these characters. And so that probably was the most rewarding because it was the most rewarding because it was the most unexpected. I wasn't thinking that was going to happen. I think the most rewarding experience was just being able to get things out. And I think it's weird because I know I kind of talked about validation, all these other things, but there was part of me that was feeling like, is this even like, different or strange or like entertaining or, engaging or something like this, or this is like weird, boring, ordinary, people are not going to understand it. And when I kind of got feedback from folks of like, oh no, like this is actually something that people be interested in, that was rewarding because I wasn't sure. I was kind of like, maybe put this out there. Is this even going to make sense type of stuff? I would say in terms of the challenging parts of it, I think, when you, I guess it kind of taps into what I was just saying. When you put something out there, even though it's not directly personal, I mean, it is personal. So kind of putting your heart out there. Even as I was reading to y'all, I was saying certain things. I was like, oh God, are they going to find it relatable? Is it going to make sense? Are they going to like me? I mean, that happens all the time and it still happens. So that too, it's like, I'm not, and it's very weird to say this because I am a therapist, but I'm also like not the type of person that dives into my emotions. Tell me about your emotions. But me, like, so I'm not, and I have raised like since growing up, like I've never really been an emotionally expressive person unless I'm like writing or creating things. So writing like this, or if I'm doing like social media type stuff, music, acting, those types of things, is where that creative juices fall out. But to write that down in words, I feel like it was kind of like that vulnerability piece. So yeah.
Oh, this is a really interesting one. Was the title Simply Platonish your first choice for the book?
I'm laughing at you, Lori, because I think we're not going to say what the other title was, but that was fun. I don't want to say what the other title is because I don't want to give anything away in the actual book. But no, the short answer was no, it was not the first one. And I kind of toured around with different ones. And I just remember a particular one, because, you always kind of ask people for feedback. And so my immediate family was the feedback for that one. I remember saying like a specific one and everyone was just like what does that mean? Like what? Like, because I was super excited. I was like, oh man, like I'm about to, like, when I get it, like it's gonna make so much sense. And I think it was one of those things because it was like a technical term that only people who knew it. So I love the fact that I share with people who are like, they're not part of the field. And so they're just like, I don't know what that means. And so, and I can chuckle about that now. I remember first being like a little bit of butthurt and be like, oh my gosh, like I was just dancing all day. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to tell people. But yeah, like I toyed around with a couple of things. Like I knew there was going to be like an ish type of stuff, like kind of like blurring the lines, like what it is, what isn't. And I ultimately knew I wanted it to be a phrase where people say it, like it sounds like it's going to sound like something else, but it isn't. So I kind of ended up with that. And sometimes I still get kind of, like a little, what's it called? Self-conscious too. And then on like another note, there always is a part of me that's like, yo, if this ever gets in the hands of like Kenya Barris, I mean, like, here's your next show. Call me up, like hit me up type of stuff. But yeah.
I was gonna add a little funny thing about not revealing anything, of course, but with the title, I do remember one of my responses was, "Can you define it?" And Patricia was like, "We're moving on. I give up."
Yeah.
But then
I can get very like.
Yeah, it was funny because I ended up later being like, "Oh, I used that in a sentence. Now I get it." And she's like, "We moved on."
Definitely that person, right? Like I fully agree when I was like, if you don't get what I'm saying right now in this moment, we're done. And that's just hilarious because I feel like that's completely different than like, as an educator and as a therapist, it's like you have to be cool and understanding. And then outside, it's like, nope, if you don't get, I mean, how can you not get it? I said it once, you've never heard of it before. Like, I don't get it. So that is definitely me.
Okay, let me see through the questions. Okay, so this is about publishing. Is there a reason why you specifically chose a Black publishing company for your book?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Black-owned businesses, right? It's twofold, like I think there was definitely a part of me, especially during like Everything Now, the Racial Reckoning and all those things where, you saw support for Black-owned businesses, but it was always like, what is the real intention? I hated these blanket statements, and it's like, well, if I'm going to do this, obviously I wanted to be able to work with folks who are like me, who understand the process, understand the nuances of it. So it's like, that's the second part of it where, and I'd say this to you, Lori, like, I really didn't know that much about the publishing. I mean, you're in the field, right? You're in creative writing field and everything like that. So kind of learning from you and trying to reach out to other folks that I knew that were part of the publishing field. And I love the conversations and events that I've been attending with you where like kind of really learning how hard it is for folks of color to be, to get things published and how like, a lot of times their ideas or their stories end up getting rejected because it's assumed that no one's going to, or, white folks who are leading these companies assume that there's no audience for that. So in my mind, I was just like, if I'm going to go through this, like, I don't want to, and I'm not saying like, oh, I'm privileged, I can, not go through it. Like, I think it's something that just like everyone goes to that experience, unfortunately. But I was really lucky to find, like, when I was just searching for different types of publishers, Black-owned publishing, I feel like it's the only one that I've seen so far where it was just like, the process made sense and was just like, it was very transparent, right? Like, this is a company that was really dedicated to helping folks like me, who weren't really, I was new. I'm a new author. I didn't really know that much about the industry, and they're willing to talk to me, walk through the process with me and help me and really feel like, my voice was going to be heard, that my story was going to be heard. And so that's why I went and did that. And it's like, folks like they get it, right? They understand. There was no question about like, are people not going to understand this or get this? Is more like, okay, let's help you. We see, because, you submit, like you do to every other type of publisher, you submit a sample and they kind of see, and then it was kind of like this, like, oh no, this is good. Let's work with you. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, and I think it's very important for folks of color who want to seek, publishing companies of color, but they don't know what's out there, it's really helpful to kind of do that research. And because I remember a little bit of when you were looking at Black Gold Publishing and we were talking about it and stuff. So I really think it's great to have these publishing companies, and I hope more and more people are able to find them for themselves. This is a really cool question. So what event from the early 2000s sticks out to you the most, and did it play a part in the story?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yes. So what event from the early 2000s sticks out to you the most, and did it play a part in the story?
Ooh, I am so glad you asked that question because I completely forgot to explain that to you. So in the book, right? So it takes place in the 2000s, or the late 2000s. Y'all know, so it's weird to be like the late 2000s, but we're not technically there yet. But it does, like, it talks about media, and so the reason that I play rap is because rap is one of the points of focus in the story, something that the main character loves, but also one of her friends, a white friend, it's like a point of contention between the two of them. And so I give OMG by Usher. If you read the book, yeah, that's there's a very interesting story about that. That I think kind of goes into a larger understanding of how you kind of relate with folks where it's a genre that you love, but other people hate it, and the particular reasons that they hate it. And it's kind of well, there are points, but then also, do you really understand? So I think music and media, for me, I love diving into music and media and the meaning that different people have, but I think it's also very nuanced when it comes to race, right, and gender, because some people have certain objections to certain types of genre because of certain reasons, but it's you also have to factor in the impact of who's listening to it, what types of opinions that you have, and it's not I'll be it's not just black and white. I feel like that's cliche, but yeah, definitely, for sure, the main character loves rap, and that is a point of contention between her and another main character.
So we talked about process a little bit, but this question is asking about specifically planning, writing, and editing. What was all of that like?
Yeah, so I said I started a little bit over over 10 plus years ago, but when I got to sit down, and I'll say that I know that my story is an unusual one or an uncommon one where I feel like my process went a lot faster than folks. I'm very lucky that the process went really fast for me, because once I got in the groove of it, it took me about a year to write, or to put all the things together, over the past decade or so. And then with Black Gold Publishing, I think everything went relatively quickly. I want to say probably after a year of meeting up with them, we're at this point right now. It was around this time last year when I had reached out to them and my manuscript got accepted. And then over the past year, just being able to go through the editing process. And unfortunately, the editor isn't able to attend tonight. But I'll just talk a little bit about my process with her. I know Black Gold Publishing, they made it a point to match me with somebody that has some understanding of the themes of the book. And so, they had they had people that they had different levels of expertise and things like that. And so they had two people, it was between one or two people, and they both had expertise and very interest in doing that because of the material and the topics that were discussed. And so I knew that it was someone that understood it, the sexology aspect of it, and the mental health aspect of it. And we had a really collaborative process where, they would go through and kind of provide the edits, but then they would ask me a lot of questions too, comprehensive questions oh yeah, I wonder why you put this down, or what did you mean by this? And so I would respond, and then it was kind of okay, we can keep it, or is there another way to rephrase it? And I was lucky enough to have someone who was able to rephrase some of the things that I wanted to say, but also keep the integrity of what I was saying as well. So I love that part too. I think it was a great process, because sometimes you feel if you get an editor, first of all, not the talking back and forth, right? I feel I was very respected. And it was very much from the very beginning, we want to keep your voice You know, we want to keep it a certain thing. And in the way that I wrote it, like you can tell it's kind of meant to be spoken or talk. Like it's not something that has perfect grammar or things like that. It's meant to be like someone's story as if you're hearing it. And so we kept that type of theme of voice, but then also like the content, the cheekiness of it, of the characters, was important. And so that collaborative process, I think, was really great to have and to experience. And I knew that I felt like I had weight, I guess, and say like if I was kind of like, well, the thing that you're suggesting, no, because this is actually like, you know, certain terms or certain concepts where it's like, this is something that I would like for people to know. So I think we had a great enough relationship where it could be like definitely appreciative and understanding of certain things. And she was able to make my work sound better, right? Or reduce it. Because sometimes, so, I mean, not always, like, I feel like I've always been like very short and to the point, but sometimes it'd be a little verbose. And so she was really good to like be succinct to certain parts, or even to say like certain things, like this is weighing the story down. Like, we don't need all the background. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm not hurt. But then it's like, it sounded better. And then there are certain things where I was like, no, I actually want to keep this. And it's like, okay, I can see that this is important to you. So let's keep it.
We have two more questions here, but something I was curious about, you know, for writers out there who might want to know this, did you find that throughout this writing process you had a lot of moments of writer's block, or was it easy for you to just kind of, you know, get the story going?
No, I think there's definitely moments of writer's block. It was like, what was it? Sometimes you kind of get into a groove and you're like, oh, this does sound really good. And then, I don't know, for me, I feel like continuity or something like that. So sometimes it would be like, oh, I'm jumping from one thing to another, and I want to make sure that it actually connects or not forget something. So sometimes I had to take a step back and be like filling in the gaps. So it wasn't kind of like I jumped, you know, especially when you're talking about something that's college, right? Like over 4 years, or we don't know over how long, but it's in general like the span of college. And so it was really important for me to be like, well, whatever these events are, that people can understand that it happened over a period of time, but also not be so unclear that you're kind of like, what is this? So there were definitely some moments where, you know, I was kind of like, what else can I say to this? Or does this even matter? If this is even important? And for me, luckily, like I guess for me, like, it wasn't like I had a pressure of a timeline or anything like this. Like, I was just writing this independently. And then as soon as I was done, I was like, all right, let me start putting it, or let me start showing it to folks. And I don't know, you can tell me a little bit more about this. I feel like there are definitely circumstances, I guess, where folks come with an idea and then the editor and them work together and they have to like write it as they're with their publishing company. Is that, or is that something else?
I think it depends. I've heard like situations where like you would have like the book or whatever it is like mostly done, but let's say there's like a chapter or a page or two where you're kind of like, I have this new idea. I don't know, like, can I bounce it off with you? Like, you might ask your editor that, and then, you know, you guys can talk about the logistics of if you need to take something out or put it in or whatever. Yeah, I've heard stuff like that, but it really depends on like the setup.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think for me, what gave me freedom was like knowing like I didn't really have like a timeline. Like I was just like, however long I need to put this together. And so that kind of helped me with the writer's block, where I was like, okay, if I need to take some time to myself, I take some time. When it's ready to be presented, is ready to be presented, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. This is a really fun question. I'm curious to see your answer. Can you summarize the book as a 2000 celebrity gossip mag headline?
What? Someone really wanted me to tap into my improv skills.
That's a writing assignment there. We got it.
Yeah, I know. It's like a 2000 celebrity gossip things. Like, okay, so here's the skill. We got this girl Pia, right? And she's a totally like badass Black woman, but she's going to like this totally white college. And I mean, like, she's never been to college before. Her family's never been to college before, but like, she gonna make it work. So she friends a lot of people and like cool dig vibes. But these two people she really click with, but like something's happening between them. I don't know. Like, but we can still be friends, right? But like, let me tell you, once you start reading this thing, you're not gonna know who's with who wants what, whatever it is. So just stick tuned and you're gonna love it. Okay, bye. That's so fetch. So hi. Yeah.
I love the voice, the impression, your theater side's coming out. I see it. I see it.
Whoever asked that question, thank you.
It's a good question, really creative. And the last one we have, it's an interesting one as well. What's the deal with mustard?
Yeah. What is the deal with mustard? I don't know. It's weird. When I was younger, I was like, ill mustard, because I always thought it was like, but then like I was introduced to the joys of honey mustard, and I've been in love with it ever since. So if you say, what's the deal with mustard? If it ain't honey, I don't want to hear about it. So that's the deal with mustard.
Oh gosh. I love that hashtag. If it ain't honey, I don't want to hear about it. All right. Well, thank you for all your questions. I really enjoyed listening to you answer all of them and hearing more about the book and process and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you for the reading. I loved how you performed it, and just all the hard work it goes into making those pictures for the albums and stuff like that. I think folks early on were asking, like, how did you put that all together? I don't know if you wanted to talk about
that. Yeah, that was hard. Like I would say I think Canva, the app Canva, definitely how I was able to do that. And also like the new feature on the iPhone, it actually came like as I was planning for this event, where I don't know if folks know that, but like you can just click, like if you take a picture on your iPhone, you can kind of click on the person and it gives like a cutout of the person. You can just copy and paste that. So it was a cool trick for me to do all those things, because I can just take the picture and then put it on whatever background I wanted. But some of those poses, man, like the glasses with the Lady Gaga thing, or I was just like, I'm just going to throw this together. And it was crooked, but I don't care, because I'm not going to have, I think she used acrylics or something. I was like, this is ridiculous. Instagram filters. I don't really like using filters, but I was like, we're going to filter this up. And so I look good. And then, yeah, like I really, just copy and paste like the album, the background itself. I was like, okay, if I can make the background good, like certain things like the Justin Timberlake one, I was like, okay, people recognize that background. And then I kind of use whatever materials I had, bought a couple of things, and just did really, y'all make me laugh at the chat. No, it was, thank you all for that feedback, because I had no idea. I was like, some of these look like a 4-year-old made it. Some of these look really nice. The Rihanna pose one, where I had to literally lean back. Like I was just like, we're just gonna make this work. But yeah. Canva, iPhone 8, Instagram filters, copy and paste.
A lot of love in the chat. Congrats on your release. Good.
All right. That is a wrap, and we're gonna pause the recording.